archive this webinar, and so if some of your colleagues, weren't able to participate, they will receive a message saying that how to access the archive and complete a post-test. You guys won't have to complete the post-test because I know that you're going through this, but for those who are doing the archive, that will be our proof that they have completed the webinar and are updated on all the information. So that was step 1. Step 2 is I'll reauthorize you as an SFG trainer, and step 3 is Jill will invite you to the new 2016 SFG Trainer Dropbox. So all the materials you received before, you will not use again. I want to repeat that again. All the material you used earlier, you will not use again because all the materials have been formatted differently. For many of you who still have DOSIF on your materials, all that has changed because our funder has changed to DFAX. There are a number of changes. So we're asking you not to use any of the 215 or earlier materials. Now, there's an additional step for all of you who are Bright from the Start approved trainers, and I saw a number of you clicking on already. There are additional steps, as you know. So I have authorized you. You'll also receive a second invite from Jill to the Bright from the Start Trainer Dropbox, as you did before. Only this time, obviously, it'll have the new material in it and the new training approval information, because all of that was revised as well. And everything has been submitted up and approved by training approval already. You just need to submit again because it is counted as a new course. Everything was changed because I don't want people using the old material or the old PowerPoints. We even changed the format look of the PowerPoints so that we're sure that people are not using the old ones. So you know that previously you had used step 3 on the secondary trainer process, and you'll do the same thing again. And you'll receive directions on how to submit from training approval. Once I enter you into as a secondary trainer in my training approval system, then you get an email, as you all know. You'll get an email for each of the 6 courses, again, with directions on how to proceed. Okay, questions so far. So we thought we'd stop. Now you can do the questions as Jill mentioned earlier. Remember, Jill is Dan Whitaker. All right, that's how her name's coming up. If you have any questions, type them in now.
Yeah, we have one already from Leslie.
Okay.
So she wants to know when all of this will begin because she's doing a training this Saturday.
All right. And so she can still use the old materials because for this Saturday, it's fine to use the older materials for this Saturday because we won't have everything up and running by then. You won't have received everything by then, I don't think. Okay.
It looks like a couple more people are typing, so while they're typing, I am going to go ahead and show everyone just how the Dropbox is going to look. A lot of you have used it in the past a lot, but just a couple things. So here will be the 2016 SFG module with all materials. Everyone will have access to this Dropbox. So I just wanted to show you, here's the folder where you'll be putting your evaluations and training sign-ins. And then also you guys will have access to the all-new training manual. So you remember when you took the TOT originally, we gave you this big binder with all the materials. And so here we have it again for you to use. And this is with the updated language, PowerPoints, and everything like that. So it's a good idea to review this training manual before you do any training. Okay. Someone asked, will you be receiving a training certificate for this webinar?
I can answer that one. And no, we're not going to give this out because this is really more of a meeting to update you. It's not necessarily a full training. So this is really updated information. So no, there won't be a certificate for this particular training. Now I see that Vanessa has asked, can I repeat the information concerning the Bright from the Start approved training? So I will try to go back. Jill, can you get us back to that slide?
Yeah.
For the Bright from the Start.
Go. Is this it?
Yes, thank you. All right. So, for Brightness Star trainers, you will receive a second invite from Jill. So, to the Brightness Star trainer Dropbox. So everyone's going to receive the first invite from Jill. And Jill, do you want to tell them that it's going to come, what email it's going to come from?
Yeah, so it's going to come from an email that looks like jwalsh10@gsu.edu.
Right.
So I'll have my last name in it.
Okay. And she typically sends you a little notice that it'll be coming. And so you receive one that invites you to the Dropbox that has all the materials in it. Then those of you who are Bright from the Start approved trainers receive a second invite. And in the second invite, it invites you to a Dropbox that has the Bright from the Start certificates in it, as well as the information, all of the information you need to submit up to Bright from the Start for approval. The secondary trainer process, Jill, do you have that handout handy? Yeah. Let's put that handout up, and so we can show them step 3 of the secondary trainer process. For those only, remember, this is only for those who are Bright from the Start approved trainers. The rest of you can just not listen to this so you don't get confused. All right?
It's coming up.
That's fine. All right. So I don't know how well you can see this or not, but it is also in the Dropbox, okay? So you will be able to access it. So there, okay. All right, and so in terms of step 1 is that you have already done step 1. That's where I present the training. Step 2, and scroll down a little bit. Let's see here. Step 2 is where I reauthorize you. And the next page. All right, step 3 is what you do right here. All right, and then step 3, and you all have these instructions. It's in the Dropbox, or you can get it on the training approval website. You log in, you follow the information here. All the information will be in the for you to submit is in the Dropbox that is the Bright from the Start training approval Dropbox. It's pretty straightforward. It's for those of you who have done this before, we have not really had hardly any problems. So it really does go fairly smoothly. And you can always email myself or Jill if you're having trouble with the system. All righty. And Jill, can you return us then to where we were?
Yeah, we have one more question from Selena Williams.
Okay.
She said, will the resubmit link on the training approval site be available to resubmit? And I think she's also meaning when will it be available?
Well, first we're going to invite you to the Dropbox, and then sometime either later this week or next week, we have to get all of your names. I have to make sure I've got all of your names of who attended today. I have to individually for each module, so for 6 times for each of you, I have to reauthorize you. It takes me a couple hours. So that's done sometime later this week. So I would say by next week you should be ready to go. Does that answer the question? All right. There's one from Tara Burke asking if the 2016 training manual available already printed. No. Well, you have to print it yourself. I'm so sorry, but we don't have funds to reprint them. There are now about 234 of you, and they cost us $60 each to print. So what I would suggest is you can just print out the pages that you're going to use. In other words, if you're only presenting the overview, you can just print out your overview pages. So print out them as you need them. We do slight updates every year. So, and we do it typically in spring or summer of every year, and we would notify you when some slight updates were made. All right. I think we've got all the questions. Let's see. Marilyn's asking, would we consider in the future to place all of SFG on DVDs? No, because DVDs go out of, they're out of date the minute you print them. So the minute you I guess, make them. So no, we have thought about that in the past, and we decided against it because Dropbox is so much more. We're able to immediately update that. So all you really have to do is download to your computer from Dropbox, and you've got it all on your computer. So, all righty. Well, let's take a peek at the next slide, and then we'll try to answer your questions as they come up. So we now have 234 trainers, as I just mentioned, have completed the training since 2011. I had approximately 60 or 70 this summer that completed because I taught 3 courses this summer, so we had a lot new. But there are, I think it's about 172 of you who are going through either this webinar or the archive process to be reauthorized, since you were from 2011 all the way through 2015. The fabulous news, in which our funders and our partners are very pleased with, is that so far, you as SFG trainers have presented to approximately 6,000 participants face-to-face. And we also have an SFG online overview that's available, some of you are aware of, through the Bright from the Start Quality Rated program. And it's about 20,000, actually it's now about almost 22,000, I just got the last report, who have completed the SFG online overview. So that's all fabulous. We're really pleased in how active the trainers have been, and we want you to continue to be active and to make sure, obviously, that you upload those sign-up sheets and those evaluations, because that's the only place we can get our numbers from to prove to our funders that we're doing a fabulous job. So let's begin now with some of the content and the new slides that have been added. So, as you'll remember, for those of you who have done this a number of times, so some of you have presented it a number of times, some of you have only presented once, some of you are still, waiting to present your first time. But as you know, the first 8 slides were the same in all 6 modules. In the new 2016 revision, the first 10 slides are now the same, and we're going to look at the 2 new ones in a minute. So the 2 new slides are next, and they're going to be followed by the new slides that appear in several of the modules. All right, so here's one of the new slides. And it talks about the national network of strengthening families. And as you can see, we're partners nationally with many other organizations. Partners with United Way, Parents as Teachers, the Children's Trust Fund, BUILD, 0 to 3, many different partners on the national level. So that's one of your new slides. It appears in the overview, and as I mentioned, it's in the first 10 slides of all of the modules. The funding source. So the funding source, as you can see in the next slide, the funding source was moved from the governor's office, from GOSEF, to the Georgia Department of Family and Children's Services. So there's the new logo that will appear in your modules, in all of them. But Strengthening Families is still administered by the Georgia Association of Young Children, but the funder is DFACS. The funder is the Department of Family and Children's Services. So this means that the funding statements on all of your handouts and documents were revised in 2014 and 15. You were advised, as they became available, to use the new documents, but I know that we realize that some people are still using the old ones, so I'm going to repeat it again. Make sure you're using the new documents out of the 2016 folder when you received it, because the funder is changed on every single handout. Oh my gosh, Jill had a lot of work to do. Jeanette helped with some, but Jill did most of them, changing the funder on all of our documents. So we want to ensure that you don't prior to 2016, because they're all out of date, either for the funder or for content reasons. And that's the reason, obviously, for this webinar. All right. So here's how the slide looks. The other slide that is one of the first 10, and it's how is Strengthening Families funded. And as you can see, it now says DFACS. There's the DFACS, the new DFACS logo there as well. And in DFACS, it's funded by the Office of Prevention and Family Support. This is also a new slide that appears in the first 10 slides. And this is to show how strengthening families, if you can, I know it's probably a little bit hard to read, but you can see on the left-hand side, kind of where the blue is, it says strengthening families. Okay, and then, so this up over here, oops, there you go, Jill, thank you. Up here has strengthening families, and then on the greenish color, it says you thrive. All right. Well, strengthening families has been around, as you know, since 2001. I would say about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, they started working on You Thrive, and now have a You Thrive website and page, which is you'll see later in your in this presentation. And You Thrive's protective factors are very similar to strengthening families' protective factors, but You Thrive is for adolescents on up, whereas strengthening families is from birth through 5. So the protective factors that are slightly different are, instead of parental resilience, as with strengthening families, it's now youth resilience with You Thrive. Social connections remains the same. Instead of parenting knowledge of child development, it's now knowledge of adolescent development. The concrete support one remains the same. In terms of the last one, social and emotional competence of children, it's now cognitive and social emotional competence in youth. So those are the two differences, and it's important, few differences, and it's important to realize that strengthening families focuses on birth through 5, and You Thrive, very similar protective factors, focuses on adolescents and above. And there's all kinds of information, particularly for those of you, some of you are working with school agers, some of you are working with youth or adolescents. And what you'll find is that there's a whole wealth of information and resources on the You Thrive webpage, which we'll show you in a little while. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we slightly revised each of the slides in the overview, each of the slides on the 5 protective factors. So this is a sample slide on parental resilience. So before, you just had some of those bullets listed. What we've done now is up at the top here, we've put in a definition of each of the 5 protective factors. So in parental resilience, you can see that it says managing stress and functioning well when faced with challenges, adversity, and trauma. And then again, it lists very similarly. Some of them will revise slightly, but it lists fairly similarly the different characteristics of parental resilience. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, each of those 5 protective factors are set up the same way. I had mentioned earlier that the format was slightly different. So you'll notice that there's not any more of that green background and the white letters. So one of the things that I did hear loudly from you all, or many of you, was that in some situations that the white lettering was hard to read and the green background was a little bit too dark. So what Jill helped us do was reformat all of the slides so they all now look the same as this particular slide does, with a slight green on the right and the left, and they're all white background with typically blue or green lettering. So we hope that those will be easier for everyone to see in your audiences. Thank you, Jason. Next. Strengthening Families Georgia activities. Well, obviously, over the 5 years, we've done a few more things. Actually, Strengthening Families has worked quite well, and we're quite pleased at our partners. We're pleased at the efforts. We're really pleased at the trainers who have done a phenomenal job in getting the word about strengthening families out there. You really are our ambassadors. So in terms of some of our activities, some of the key initiatives that we're now embedded in, and this is one of the slides from the overview. So this is a new slide. It's not necessarily new, it's updated slide, I should say. So in terms of embedding the key factors into Georgia, you know that we're embedded in the quality rated program. That has remained the same. We're also embedded in the Department of Education, the 360-degree standards. In child welfare, we are in the DFACS roundtables. The next one is new, and so with the Multi-Agency Alliance for Children, MAC, Youth Thrive is embedded, and it's embedded in DFACS's independent living program. In fact, MAC and DFACS were awarded a grant from National, and they're one of, I think it was one of 5 grants that were awarded to work on Youth Thrive in the state of Georgia. So we're really proud of them. This just happened this past fall, and so they've been at it, roughly about a year. So we're really pleased at that. Prevent Child Abuse Georgia has been a long-term advocate and has always been involved and active in strengthening families. Home visiting has added strengthening families to their competencies and to their institutes. This is new, Project Launch. So what I did actually earlier this year was I did a Strengthening Families Training of Trainers just for Project Launch individuals in Muskogee County. So all their child and family serving organizations most of them have now a Strengthening Families Georgia trainer in Muskogee County. So we're really excited about that. And that's a 5-year project, so I'm going to go back and do some more with them, hopefully in another year. Something else that's new is the UGA Healthy Marriage and Family Relationship Education Program. And that's a 5-year grant in which Strengthening Families is embedded. And it's be working in District 5, which covers 12 Northeast Georgia counties. And they're working primarily with foster families, but with other families as well. And in that, what we're doing, Strengthening Families is doing for them, is that this winter I'll be presenting something that's new that I know you're going to be glad to hear about. And that is going to be a TOT for parent leaders. And they are about 5 modules, 1 hour each, on each of the 5 protective factors, and they're for parents, though. So, as you know, the modules that you're currently using are for professionals, and these are going to be for parents. So we've already have them developed. We need to revise them a little bit and update them a little bit, and then I'll be developing the TOT this fall, and it'll be rolled out next spring, so next winter and spring. So we're really excited about that. In terms of previously, we had always had United Way involved, and they use Strengthening Families on their national human resources website. And one of our nice partners, and relatively new, some of you may not be aware of, is the Georgia Alliance to End Homelessness. And what they have done is added Strengthening Families to all of their training, to all of their institutes, and they have really taken it to heart and embedded it. There are many more SFG activities across the state, and I did not obviously cover them all. I just selected some to cover. So we appreciate all of your efforts. The rest of the things at the bottom, I think we've really covered already in terms of the number of trainers. We've had over 100 parent cafes covered, and I think the rest that you're more or less aware of. So I think that's pretty good for that slide. All right, so this is a new slide that is not in all, but it's in several of the modules. And DKL requested this, for sure, in the overview at least. And it reflects their partnership with Strengthening Families Georgia. And they have always been partners with Strengthening Families from the very beginning. But in 2012, you know that Strengthening Families was embedded in the Quality Rated program. You're all fairly well aware of that. In 2014, some of you may not be aware of, that DKL had a statewide family engagement task force to which they invited key stakeholders. And Strengthening Families, and actually several people from Strengthening Families were invited, including myself, were invited to serve on it. This was the definition that we came up with, and this is an actual slide from the overview, so it is part of what you will be presenting. But the definition below is what was a joint definition after looking at many definitions from across the nation and from major projects. This is the definition that we came up with for Georgia. So it's a shared responsibility, and it's to actively promote, support, and sustain family well-being. This last statement was an important one because it's talking about not just sustaining and helping children develop, but sustaining family well-being. And I am so pleased that DECAL has included this now in their definition of family engagement, because that is totally new. So I'm pleased overall with the task force's work, and there is a whole report. That picture there is the cover of the report, and it's available on the DECAL website. Something else that's new, and I hope some of you are aware of this because some of you, this actually came out in 2014, and Strengthening Families re-looked at all of their assessments and created some new assessments. So they now have a portal, okay? And we'll look at a sample of the portal in a minute at the next slide. But the portal is new, and there are 3 new assessment tools. So in the past, we had an assessment tool for family child care, and we had an assessment tool for center-based programs. We now have a self-assessment tool for home visiting, a self-assessment tool for community-based programs, and a parent's assessment of protective factors. Now, there's obviously more information about this in the text in the binder, so you'll be able to, as we talked about earlier, that's already up in the Dropbox. You'll be able to have access to it. It's in the new 2016 Dropbox. And all are explained in the revised trainer manual, and there are links to the assessments as well. You may remember that you do need to make 1 copy of the assessments because you put them in a pass-around folder and you pass that around during the overview module. So that's part of what happens during the overview. But you obviously need to kind of look at them and be more familiar with them. So let's kind of take a little bit closer look at each of them. So this is what the portal looks like. It's new and revised, and so it's actually quite user-friendly, so I'm actually pleased with it. And it gives direct links to the assessments as well as information about all the assessments, if you want more than we provided. All right, and this is also a new slide. So the last one was a new slide that's in your overview, and this is also a new slide that's in your overview. It replaces one that was there that had the older assessments listed in it. And so for programs, as you can see, what I just mentioned earlier, there's one for center-based, for family child care. The new ones are home visiting and community-based assessments. And then for staff, there has always been a staff survey. For parents, there has always been the protective factors survey, but there is now a new one, which is called the Parents Assessment of Protective Factors. So the new tools are the self-assessment for home visitors, the self-assessment for community-based programs, and the parent's assessment of protective factors. Those are the 3 new ones. The assessment page itself, and this is in some of the PowerPoints as well. The assessment page itself looks different, and it's just a little bit easier to use and a little bit more appealing in terms of format. That's what any one of the assessment pages look like. In terms of training resources, well, you all are familiar with this. I know you are because you all took the TOT. So we know that in terms of training resources that the face-to-face training is available. And when you go to the website, what we'll see in a few minutes is Jill is preparing a map that has your contact information on it so individuals can contact you if they want a SFG training presentation. And so that's why it's so critical that after this webinar, you complete it's like an evaluation, but in the evaluation, there's some evaluation questions, but there is also information on updating your information in terms of your email address and your Dropbox email address, which may or may not be the same that you want to use. So make sure that you do complete the survey at the end and update your information. So in terms of training resources, you know that we have training on the overview and the 5 protective factor modules. There is also available nationally and has been. They had started developing their training after we started developing ours, so we didn't know that they were going to develop training nationally. But they have, and they have online modules, and there are 7 of them actually. One is an overview module, one on each of the 5 protective factors, and then a reflections module. And in those modules, they are free, but there's not right from the start credit awarded for those. So if individuals want right from the start credit, they obviously need to attend or participate in one of our face-to-face or the online ones that are available through right from the start quality rated program. All right, so in terms of the 2 primary training opportunities on the 5 protective factors, as I just said, here's where you can receive more information on the training of trainers for Strengthening Families National. Okay, I do need to warn you that they did have one in Atlanta last year, I believe it was in 2015. But I do need to say to you that it did cost nearly $3,000. So we were glad to be able to provide ours pretty much free except for the cost of the food. But it is available nationally if you are interested in participating and being a national Strengthening Families trainer. I just want to warn you, there's a cost involved. There's a link to it. You Thrive, which is brand new. I don't even know if they've held a class yet, but it is brand new, and they are either developing or have already put out their first You Thrive training of trainers for those who work with adolescents or older. So that's a whole other new opportunity for you if you're interested. And I don't believe they had any cost information because they were just setting it up as we were preparing this. All right. So those are the major changes on the slides. I can see I spelled references. All right, references and resources. So in terms of, we did update in all of the modules. All the references are updated. Jill did a lot of work on the parental resilience and on the concrete support in times of need, making sure we had updated statistics and updated references. She spent a good deal of time on those, and I did some of the others, and some of the original developers worked on the rest. And so all the references and all the modules have been updated, and the resources have all been updated. We spent pretty much the entire spring, some of winter. Actually, we started in late fall and spent, I think it was April 6th that I actually put it up. So we spent quite a few months on making sure that we had the most updated information in all of the modules. In a particular interest, there is a trainer resource folder in Dropbox. We've added some things that we felt that you would be interested in. So one of them is a relatively new, in 2014. It's a literature review by Charlene Harper Brown about Strengthening Families' approach and the protective factors framework. It really is excellent if you're interested in not only the history, but it also goes into the research behind each of the protective factors, not only from the earlier research about why they even started Strengthening Families, but up-to-date now research in why these 5 protective factors still are the most effective protective factors in reducing the likelihood of child abuse and neglect and in promoting optimal development for young children. The next piece that we put in that was just developed last year, so many of you know about parent cafes, but there is now a cafe overview, and it talks about a couple different kinds of cafes, and there is a new community cafe, and there's there is also a conversation cafe for providers to have with parents. So there are links in this particular handout, this one here. There are links to this particular handout in the trainer resource folder and in this particular article that explains several different types of cafes. So that's very handy. The next resource is for those of you who work with child welfare or are ending up presenting to child welfare. They have done a lot of work. There are 14 different entities across the nation, some of them states, some of them cities, who have done a lot of work with the child welfare in their state or their city. And so there are lots more of resources for child welfare, including a scripted curriculum for child welfare staff. It has 8 different modules in it, and that is all explained in this resources and references section and links to those modules. So for those of you who work with child welfare staff, there are particular scripted curriculums that you can use free of charge that you can access now and present. And so many, like the overview one is fairly similar to ours, only obviously it's national, so it doesn't have the Georgia stuff, but it is tied to child welfare as opposed to being appropriate across all different disciplines. So that's a big step forward for national. I also put in there a presentation that I did with Kentucky. So a couple of years ago, I guess it was in 2013 and 14, Jeanette Meyer and myself made a couple trips up to Kentucky because they invited us to help them get their Strengthening Families Kentucky started. So I worked with their leadership team, and I also did a training of trainers for, oh my gosh, we had like 45 people in that room. So I did a training of trainers for them on our things, and they were going to then revise them for Kentucky. We actually revised some of them prior to that. But anyway, one of the presentations that we did later was for Smart Start National Conference. And in that national conference, Kentucky leaders and I presented, and there are some excellent slides that Kentucky put in there with background on brain development and health development and adverse childhood experiences, the ACE study. If you don't know what adverse childhood experiences are and how those experiences that are not optimal can affect adults later in life, it is important for you to at least look at those slides. And then there are references in those slides to further information. I did put in the overview a little bit about adverse childhood experiences and its impact, and there are some references listed after the module if you want to learn more about it. But it's quite fascinating and quite scary also in terms of how some of the experiences that we have not necessarily has to affect us later in life, but may very well be affecting us later in life, particularly if we have 2 or more adverse childhood experiences within our early childhood experience. All righty. So that, in terms of a few more new Strengthening Families resources, I did mention this one already. So those are the 8 modules that I mentioned about the child welfare curriculum. And then there are also the Youth Thrive website and what other states are doing with strengthening families. So if you're interested, Georgia has taken their own path. Every single state has taken their own path and has developed different things. And so what they've done now is put pretty much a compilation of what everyone has been doing in terms of their state efforts on a national website. So if you're interested in what other states are doing, this is the site to click on and look at more. So in terms of new content, there's a little bit in all of the modules. There is an increased mention of these 4 things. There's an increased mention of brain development, cultural competency, particularly in the overview, toxic stress in the ACE study, particularly in the overview, and the fact that strengthening families is a two-generation approach. This has really not been focused on enough, but just when you think about strengthening families, you realize that you're working with children and you're working with parents, so it obviously is a two-generation approach, but it hasn't been emphasized that much in our work. In terms of additional changes to the modules, not only the updated content and the reference and the handouts have been all updated. I want you to make sure that before you present on each module, or even before moving further, that you reread each module. Some of the pieces will seem very familiar to you. Some of them will seem a little bit new to you. So, as we mentioned before, the revised 2016 Trainer Manual, what you have as a hard copy binder, is in the new Dropbox. So, we're going to look at a few of the more significant changes. So some additional significant changes to the overview is that we added the research briefs. Some of you have seen this because you took it in later years. I think we added them in 2013 or 14. But those of you who took TOT earlier had not seen these. And in addition, on the back of each, or on the second page of each of these research briefs, there's also an action sheet. So it tells what you can do. There you go. Here's a sample one. Thank you, Jill. So here's, for instance, is the social connections one. And then on the back of it, there's the action sheet. And it basically tells you about questions that you can ask parents, what kinds of activities you might do. So they're they're more practical is what I want to say. So the first page of it really has more to do with the facts. And the second page of each one, and there's one on each of the 5 protective factors. The second page is more with what to do and how to do, so the more practical piece. Okay, you return us to the presentation. All right, so, and I mentioned earlier that I added some impact statements about the adverse childhood experiences, and toxic stress is added in there. I significantly revised the ways to embed the protective factors handout that was in the overview, and Jeanette significantly revised the resources section as well. So there are now resources for working with families in addition to working with other professionals. Lastly, we added to the overview of strengthening families that describes better how strengthening families is used in different settings. And Jill, I think I sent to you a handout on that one. And it shows how, in terms of in different settings, that's not it. That's one of the self-assessments, but it actually says overview at the top. We'll see if we can pop it up in a minute. There we go. All right. And so in terms of the overview, what it will do is show you more about how strengthening families is used in all different kinds of settings. And obviously there's still about the 5 protective factors. But it talks to you about how strengthening families is used in home visiting, how it's used in child welfare. So this is now a new handout. And then on the back, it continues in terms of how it's used in early care and education, how it's used in child abuse and prevention, neglect efforts, and so forth, and how it's used in home visiting. So what it does is provide a nice overview of how strengthening families is used across all sectors, across all disciplines. So, many of you are in early childhood, but about half of you in all the presentations for training of trainers that I've done, I have to say we have about half of you are in early childhood, but the other half of you are in many, many different disciplines related to family serving organizations. So we have individuals who are trainers from domestic violence organizations, from homeless organizations, from DFACs. We have them from child abuse prevention efforts, just all kinds of, we have them from technical colleges, 4-year colleges. We have trainers from almost every single discipline, and many, many different organizations. We have CASA volunteers who have taken the trainers. There's just a wide variety of trainers, and I'm so pleased that we do have such a wide variety of trainers from child and family serving organizations. Okay, Jill, we can return to the, thank you. All right, so those are the significant changes to the overview. Few significant changes to parental resilience. Per your request, I did hear you. For those of you who said, oh, this module is a little too long. All right, I did hear you. It's been shortened to better fit into a 2-hour time frame, and Jill can be thanked for that. And the parental assessment activity, we had one on, there were 3 of them in there, and one was on deployed military families, and we omitted that because it was too confusing to do all 3 of those activities at the same time. So there are now just 2 parental assessment activities that still remain. So we took out one of those activities, and there are 2 that still remain, so people get a feeling of what kinds of assessments are out there, but it's not so overwhelming or time-consuming. Jill also included an updated research on stress, so that was, I think, was very helpful. In terms of the social connections module, the first 2 of the small group activity handouts are now different. So we're going to take a peek at those. So you had before, you also had 3. You had 1, 2, 3. This one, the social connections, exploring strengths and needs, has remained the same. These first 2 have changed. And Jill, if you can pull up what you had just up a minute ago about the program self-assessment. Exactly. Okay, so this is the program self-assessment for social connections. And so that is one of the activities that they do. If you'll remember that you break them up into 3 small groups, and each group chooses one of those particular activities, either this one, the next one, or the strengths and needs that I just showed you. Okay, so let's go back and take a peek at the second one, which is the social connections action sheets, which we kind of saw just a minute ago, but I'll show it to you again. Okay. Let's see overview. It's the one that is the blue with the blue leader on it, protective and promotive. There we go. All right. And so this is the back page of the research briefs that we looked at just a minute ago. And so the groups then are going to, each of the 3 groups, the self-assessment, this one who's working with the action sheets, or the group that's working with the strengths and needs, will all see what they can do more so in their organizations to strengthen what they're doing based on the ideas or based on something that's similar to what's listed on the sheets. So we've just revised and updated the materials and the handouts more. Okay, we can go back to the presentation. Alrighty. All right. So additional changes to child development. We did add in, so I met with Diane Bales last December, and we worked with each of the modules, and she's made suggestions for each of the modules on how to embed more brain development information into each one. So there's a little bit in each one. In the child development one, there is also a handout, a Better Brains for Babies handout for parents, and there's a picture of what it looks like. It's a 2-page handout that has lots of practical ideas for working with parents. So I think you and your participants will enjoy that. And of course, on the Better Brains for Babies website, if you've never looked at it, oh my gosh, there's so much more that would be helpful to you all. In terms of concrete support in times of need, per your request again, the module is shortened. We know that was too long. I had trouble getting it all in 2 hours. And so did several of you, and you did email me, which I appreciate. And I do want you to let me know when things are not working, because I want to make it better. I want to make it work for you, and I want you to be successful in your presentations. So please do give me feedback and let me know. So we did shorten it to fit better into a 2-hour time frame, and Jill did that. we actually, in terms of the other feedback that you gave me, was in terms of the Price is Wrong activity, which was fun, but we made it Jill made it Georgia examples. So, and we shortened the activity because there were like 5 different ones that you did in there, and we shortened it to 3. So it's easier to accomplish. We still cover those areas, but not doing the question and answer and them writing their answers on the half sheets of paper. So it is shorter. There are 3 rather than 5 of those questions now. The research was updated in several areas, and several resources were added to the Concrete Support in Times of Need handout on the resource list. Mother to Baby Georgia, the Children's Helpline, Better Brains for Babies, and Great Start Georgia Referral Center. Additional significant changes to social emotional competence. Dr. Laurel Beckham, who's the person who wrote it in the first place and developed it, and is an expert in terms of not only working with parents, but also in social emotional development. She really rewrote, I would say about a fourth of it at least, so that she shortened it so it'll fit better in a 2-hour time frame. So the text and several slides have been rewritten to better fit. And then she added helpful resources for parents as well. All right. So I think we have one more section left to go. But I want to answer any questions that you might have. So, all right. Lamont said that he was glad we put in something about cultural competency. I also added a little bit in there, very little bit, but about cultural humility. And if you don't know what that is, you'll find out when you read the overview. All right. Let's see. I don't think we have any other new questions. Okay, so I think we're okay. All right. If we missed one, retype it again. All right. So next, so changes to logistics. So we already mentioned some of these, but I do want to review some, so I'm sure that you're not only using the new ones, but you're aware of it, because even as, like for instance, we moved away from GOSEF about 1.5 years ago. The funding changed from GOSEF, and the governor did this. Basically, he moved the Strengthening Families funding to DFACS. So this was a move by the governor. So many of the projects that were in the governor's office for children and families were really moved into different agencies. And Strengthening Families was moved to DFACS by the governor. All right, so there's a new funding statement. There's a new funding logo that's DFACS. There's a new evaluation form in 2016, which requests responses to these following 2 questions. How will your organization use the Strengthening Families information presented? And identify a specific change in your organization that you intend to make as a result of this training. So this was a reaction, or I guess a response from our leadership team saying we need to know more about what they're going to do with the material and the information that they're receiving. So Jill, let's just pull up that evaluation for a second and take a peek at where those questions are.
So while I am pulling that up, Marilyn had a question about all this material being translated into Spanish or other languages.
Okay. And yes, we don't have funding to do that, but the first thing that, I didn't write it in for next year, and I really need to seek separate funding for that, but if we're able to, what I'd like to do is to translate first at least the PowerPoints into Spanish. So that is on the to-do list, but I'm not so sure that we have the money for. I know we don't have it this year. But the goal is to first translate the PowerPoints, then to translate the handouts. And the last thing would be to translate, this is all pending funding, would be to translate the manual. So we're not quite there yet. I can say that where we are translated into Spanish is on the overview that is on the online. DCAL funded that. And so in the online version that's for the quality rated programs, it is available in both English and Spanish. So all of that has been translated. Okay. It is different. The online is, even though it has the majority of the content, it does not have all of the content, and it's set up in a different format than the PowerPoint modules that you have. Okay, here's a picture of the evaluation, and at the very bottom, those 2 questions are the ones that have been added. So make sure that you're using the newest version, which has the Office of Prevention and Family Support at the top. There we go. All right. So, and that will be in the 2016 box. You were sent it all earlier, but we notice when we get them back, some of you are still using the old versions. All righty. Okay, we can go back to the presentation. All righty. The other thing that's new is that it's not new in a big way, but it's new in a way that was requested by DFACS. So there's a new sign-in sheet. If you can pull up one of those, Jill. Okay. And it now has, real high up at the top here, it has an added line for the sponsoring agency or organization. So we now have to report to DFACS who is the sponsoring organization. So just make sure that you have that line filled in, but otherwise it is the same. I think I revised a couple of years ago. We did add a couple little things down at the bottom in terms of different categories. So that there's 1 or 2 more categories that are more distinctive based on feedback we got from participants. That is different too. I'd forgotten about that. Alrighty, back to the presentation. Alrighty. So again, if you're using the old forms, you know what I said. Delete them, get rid of them, and use everything that's new in the 2016 Dropbox when you get invited. All right. We also have a new website. So if you have not looked at our new website, we put that up for all. It was in late 2014, but mostly in 2015. It has a news and events section. It has information about the framework, the Protective Factors Framework. It has a family page that includes the parent newsletters. And Jill's going to give us a little update on it. Oh, that's You Thrive. That's not us. There we go. All right, Jill, do you want to talk for a minute about that? I'll let you talk about it.
Sure. So under this, we typically list a lot of upcoming events. Like here we have the GACI conference coming up shortly. A good place for trainers to go is under the professionals link. Here you can find the most up-to-date newsletters that you might want to use in your presentations, especially for the overview. We encourage people to print out the updated newsletters to pass around. You can get just the basic fact sheets for each protective factor. So if you have an organization looking to do these trainings and they're not really familiar with the protective factors, you can send them a link to this Protective Factors Framework so they can review each module and maybe get a better sense of which training would be best for their audience. Just general information about SFG. So this also includes the partner and leadership list. If you're looking for other people who collaborate or organizations who collaborate with Strengthening Families Georgia, this is a good place to look. Different parent resources. We also have here under the families link. So this is the parent newsletters. It has like Text for Me Babies, the 1-800-CHILDREN helpline. So if you're looking for some other resources that you can point families to, especially in Georgia, this would be the tab for it. And then just general contact information, we have it here as well. So be sure and check it out just so you know which resources are available for you on the website as well. And I'm happy to point you towards any of those if you don't find them easily on our website.
All righty, thank you. And so Jill is maintaining, we're really pleased, Jill is maintaining the website. So if there are things that you feel that would be of great interest that we could put in our news section, it's fine to send Jill things too. And if we're able, we will put them up on onto our website. So, so any great new resources that you come across or any great new events that are coming up, let us know about it, and we'd be glad to post them as well, as long as they're related to the protective factors and the strengthening families. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. So this is all about you. So available later this fall. So we have to see who is going to update. So we know all of you who are on today are going to update in terms of your eligibility to provide the new courses, okay? Jill has created a map, but we have to wait till we get everybody updated, or we get as many people who are going to update as possible. So for those of you who are not on the call today, maybe your colleagues, and maybe they're even in the same organization as you, they're going to receive some information from Jill on how to use the archived webinar and how to answer the post-test questions. And then after that, once we get everybody updated, and it'll be October, November, December, late fall of 2016. What Jill will do is post on a map that looks similar. It looks like some of the Google symbols, as you know, like on a map. She'll post your name, your organization, your city, whether or not you're a Bright from the Start approved trainer, and your public email address. So it's critical in the survey that you're going to finish at the end of this module or this webinar. It's critical that you include the public email address that you want to be listed on this map that anyone will be able to pull up on our SFG website. Okay? And it's pretty cool. I know you can't see it now, but basically what happens is when you click on one of these little spots, so this one would be, we're by 16. So here's Savannah. We'll pick Savannah here. All right, so by Savannah here, say I clicked on that spot, and maybe that's Katrina. I don't know who it is, but whoever it is, it would list her name, her organization, her city, the fact that she is a Bright from the Start approved trainer, and her public email address. And that's all that's on there, so that they could contact you if they wanted a module presented by you. Okay? All right. So let's see if there's anything else. Well, let's see. I think that's it. Okay. So I just basically said all of this. That basically Jill will be contacting you. You may have a different email address that you want us to use for Dropbox. If so, on that survey, there's a place for your public email address and a place for your Dropbox email.
Can I say something really quick about this, Pat?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I just wanted to verbally kind of let you guys know the difference for your public-facing email address and your Dropbox. Dropbox is a rather large file, so if you already have a Dropbox you're using under an email address, it might not also fit these materials in it. So you might want to use a separate email account that you set up for Dropbox just for Strengthening Families, because it is a large file, and we don't want you guys to go over and then have to pay for Dropbox. I have 2 accounts. One is for Strengthening Families, and the other is for my work, and that's just so I have enough space and kind of separate usage and keep it clean. So again, the Dropbox email is just an email address that's set up with Dropbox where you have a lot of folder space available there. Thank you.
All righty. All right. So please help us get your most current information so that you can access the most current information. And we know that, life happens. We know that email addresses change. Jill gets quite a few bounce backs each time, and then she has to try to hunt individuals. So save Jill from the hunt by, when your email's address changes, sending her a change of address or letting her know what's going on. So she doesn't have to call your phones or your organizations and find out, okay, are they still there? What's going on? All right, so that would just make life easier for Jill and myself. All right, so questions, and I did see a couple questions. Let's see. Marilyn Ward asked, could the Strengthening Families be included with all new in-home as part of their initial training? Well, that's a great question, and I'm going to jot that one down because it's a question to ask Bright from the Start, basically. So at least if they would mention it, if nothing else. But I will ask Bright from the Start that question, but that's one of their questions. Let's see. Are all of our trainings still beginning level? Yes, they are all still beginning level. Our training of trainers is now intermediate level, but our training modules that we offer, those 2-hour modules that we're offering, are all beginning level, simply because they are really all about knowledge and understanding. There's just a little bit of application and so forth in them. So yes, they are all beginning level. Let's see.
May I ask a question if SFG could be included with all new in-home providers and new center directors as part of their initial training?
Yes, I did answer that question.
Okay, good.
Okay, and basically I said that's up to DECAL whether they would do that or not, but it's a great question that I will ask them. There's Katrina. Julia said we can get a copy of the webinar. You absolutely can, in the sense that it will, I don't know if it's a copy or not, but it's going to be archived. So Jill, can you answer that question?
Yeah, so this webinar, I will send out a link, especially to the people who haven't attended. And for those of you who did attend, I will, of course, make it available if you want to review any of this information. It will be the exact webinar recording. So it'll be us talking and the slides presenting just as we are now.
Okay. All right. All right. And so I don't know if they can save that or not, Jill. So do you know the answer to that? In other words, once it's archived, they can access it for up to a month. We're going to have it available for up to a month. But I don't think, can you save those?
Yeah, you can. So I will send everyone, typically what I do is a Dropbox link to it where you can view it there. It is such a large file, so I can't email it. I can only share it in a Dropbox link. And if you want to then download it, it's just a very large file to keep for yourself. So typically people just like to view it on that Dropbox link rather than downloading it.
Okay. All right. All right. So good information there. Okay. All righty. All right. So in terms of your role in embedding strengthening families and the protective factors in your organization. So I want you to think about this. I mentioned earlier that you are our best ambassadors. So I want you to obviously continue to provide the SFG training and to continue to upload those sign-in sheets and those evaluations to Dropbox, because we need to document it. We absolutely have to document that for our funders. We want to continue to be funded. You know, in today's day and age, there's nothing certain about funding, as you all know. So we want to be able to continue to be offering strengthening families, and to do so, we need to have good numbers to show that we are making not only a difference, but that we're reaching a lot of people. There is a tip sheet checklist that Strengthening Families leadership team and partnership worked on this year beginning in January. And it looks like this. It's basically a tip sheet about how to embed Strengthening Families in your organization's work. And I actually used it in the Strengthening Families 3 TOTs that I did earlier this year. And what I ask people to do is in the first column, to check off what they're already doing about strengthening families. Thank you, Jill. In the second column, then they check off what they're willing to do within the next 3 months for strengthening families. And there are all ways to embed strengthening families in your work. So there's information on how to embed strengthening families in your strategic planning, in your training. Back to page 1. In terms of awareness, and some of them are very simple things, like add a brief website paragraph, which is already developed, to your own website, or link your website to your organization's website to the Strengthening Families website. Another one is about identifying yourself as either a trainer during your particular during not only your training, but as you attend different meetings. And some of you have added, which I think is fabulous, have added Strengthening Families Georgia Trainer to your signature on your email accounts. So I think that's also a good idea. So, and that helps you as well as helps promote Strengthening Families Georgia. So this will be something that you'll be receiving from Jill. It won't be until in fall. We'll work on that in this next grant year, and our next grant year starts October 1st. So in fall, you'll receive that, and I'll ask you as trainers to fill that out. As I mentioned, all the 2016 trainers have already filled that out, and I have that data, and we'll compile that next year when we have a little bit more funding. Okay. Let's see. Let's go to the next. Jill, if you put us back to the presentation. Thank you. All right, so we've done this in terms of, we've finished what's on this particular slide. All right, so these are all new things. One I gave a hint of earlier, but basically soon to be released is a 1-hour online Strengthening Families Georgia course titled Connections, the Foundation of Family Engagement. It's going to be available in Spanish and English, but it's only, again, going to be for the quality rated programs, the same as the overview is available for. We have asked the question if it could be available to more, but we have not received that answer yet. So for those of you who are working with quality rated programs, there'll be a new course available, a 1-hour online course titled, that I wrote, and Erica Goldthorpe at Pro Solutions helped put into the online format on Connections, the Foundation of Family Engagement. The reason I asked DECAL if they would fund a course as such is because when they redid the self-assessment, so about a year ago, when National kind of updated and revised and made longer their self-assessment tools, DECAL said, oh, this is too much for our providers. And they said it's too long, and there's just too many entries, and it's just too detailed. So they developed their own version. Now, my advice to them, which they did follow for the most part, was to keep some of the same items, just use fewer of them and simplify them a little bit, but keep it as close to the National as they could, and they did do that. However, they only cover 4 of the 5 protective factors, and the social connections factor was left out. And so when I relooked at what they had done, I thought, well, we need to do something else about social connections so that people realize that, oh my gosh, it is those connections, it is those relationships that we first form between care providers and children, and care providers and parents, that are part of social connections, and how important it is for parents to have other social connections outside of the care setting with other individuals and other parents to help support them through those early years with their children. So basically I proposed writing a course, and we proposed either a 1 or a 2-hour course. They chose the 1-hour one, and so we are now in the final stages. It's already been developed. We're putting video to it in September, a few little video clips to it in September, and so it'll probably be available later this fall through DECAL. But again, it is only for the Right from the Start quality rated programs. But that's new, so that's cool. And then field tested, I did mention this one a little bit earlier, field tested earlier next year is a new Strengthening Families Training of Trainers that is for parents and community leaders. So this is what several of you have asked for in terms of they will be 5 1-hour parent modules on each of the protective factors. What I'm also going to cover in that SFG TOT will be how to do parent cafes. So basically I'm going to teach individuals not only how to guide those presentations, those 1-hour protective factor modules for parents, and it's geared mostly for parents and community leaders to do with other parents and other community leaders. You, of course, will be invited to attend them as well in terms of the TOT, pending funding again. So the only thing I have funding for right now is one for the University of Georgia, and so we'll see whether we can get funded for others for open, like we have done the SFG TOT for professionals in the past. Something else that's new and cool is that we received a little external funding, and it was just it was $500 last year, $500 last year, $500 this year. But what we did is we put that towards developing posters and postcards. And there are links to them, so Jill has put the links to them so that if you wanted to, we can do it one of two ways. If you want to print your own, that's totally fine with us. And they have been approved by DFACS. They are ready to go. We've already had ours, some printed for us. Of course, with $1,000, you can't do too much. But we were able to get them designed and printed. But you're welcome to either let, it's actually Jeanette Meyer, who is our statewide coordinator for Strengthening Families, to let her know if you want them. They will cost. We don't have any available for free. We just were able to print very few, literally. Or you can print your own. You're welcome to use it and print your own because it already has all of the funding information and everything on it, and they've been approved by DFACS. So they're kind of cool looking. So you can distribute them electronically, or you can distribute them in hard copy. Now, that'll be up to you.
We have one question from Carol Clark, and
okay.
She asked, will that new 1-hour SFG course for Quality Rated meet the requirement for centers going through Quality Rated?
No. So no. The new 1-hour courses are for parents, number one. I want to be very clear on that. They are for parents. They are not for professionals. And number two, the only course that currently meets the DCAL requirement for centers going through Quality Rated is the overview. That is the only course that currently meets the requirements. Okay. In terms of will participants be able to receive a certificate for the 1-hour course? Yeah, there'll be a certificate of attendance. I don't know whether we're going to make them right from the start approved or not because they really are for parents. So that's a discussion we have not had yet or not, Pat. Okay. Let's see. All right. There's a question earlier that I missed. How soon will the webinar be archived for others to review who missed today's webinar? Jill, that's a question for you.
Yeah, I typed it in the chat box down there. So for those who missed the webinar today, and you might be asking on behalf of coworkers or other people, we are also going to send out this archived webinar in tandem with the post-test. So I am uploading that post-test today into SurveyMonkey to make sure that they answer everything correctly and get their updated information. So hopefully later today or early tomorrow, but I can certainly email out the webinar to those who did attend later today.
Okay. All right, we're about at the end. So I just want to really thank you for continuing to be an SFG trainer, continuing to be active, continuing to get the word out, and for being ambassadors for Strengthening Families. And I know that you are all involved in working with children and families every single day, and we really do appreciate all of your efforts. You really enable professionals and families to be strong. And it really is each of you who do make a difference. Sometimes we always don't see that difference, but you do each make a difference. All right, any final questions? Because we're done. Any final questions?
Thank you. Just one more reminder as well. As soon as we sign off from this webinar today, you will be automatically routed to a survey where we'll get all of your updated information. So please stay on when you see that link to the survey. So don't automatically kind of sign off, and we'll be linking you to that. It looks like we don't have any questions. I'll wait another couple seconds, and then I'm going to go ahead and let it link to that survey.
Okay. I would just go ahead because it looks like we've just got thanks. And if you go ahead and link. And again, thank you, and have a great what's left of the summer. Take care, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.